The disability community in Canada measures more than 27% of the Canadian population as of 2022, and in Nova Scotia, 38% of the population identifies as having a disability. Today's interview is very important as we try to understand more experiences of people within the community who have been subjected to violence and abuse by caregivers and loved ones. The Canadian Human Rights Commission and the Federal Housing Advocate released a study that 63% of women with disabilities said their homelessness was because of violence or abuse. This is a systematic issue as most homeless shelters are not accessible, the resources aren't there, and there is often no other option for these women who are subjected to violence except for becoming homeless. You're listening to The Pulse on AMI Audio. Today I'm speaking with Vicky Levack, an advocate with the Disability Rights Coalition of Nova Scotia. Vicky and I are going to speak about her lived experience and the lack of resources available for women experiencing violence in their homes. Vicky, first of all, welcome to the show and thank you for coming on here to share your experience with us.
Thank you for having me.
So let's dive in here and talk about a new report that was released recently that highlights housing inadequacies and in Canada. And they found that 63% of women with disabilities who experienced homelessness did so because of violence. How does this resonate with you?
I'm saddened but not surprised in the slightest. Many people, both men and women, stay in domestic violence situations simply because they have nowhere to go and that they don't have the means to find affordable units or accessible units, or even if you can find an accessible unit, then you have no one to take care of you if you need care, like physical care. So they're like, well, at least this person's taking care of me and I'm not dead yet. So they feel stuck. Right? There's nowhere for them to go. So things get bad enough that people would rather stay on the street without the care they need. Tells you how bad their situations must be. But yeah, I'm not surprised by that at all. Sad, but not surprised.
What about just, leaving to go to, a safe place, a shelter, maybe for the night? Like, what are?
There's no accessible shelters, at least in Nova Scotia. There are no accessible shelters for women.
And what makes women with disabilities particularly vulnerable to abuse at the hands of people who are supposed to love and care for them?
I think a lot of it is financial. People with disabilities are notoriously we're broke. Um, Women with disabilities, according to my last look, make about $9,000 a year, as opposed to a man who's disabled. They make about $16,000 a year, which still isn't a lot of money. Please check me on that. It's been a while since I looked at those statistics. So it may have shifted, but when you're only making 9,000 a year, and that's just on average, like that's not enough to live on, and you need others to financially support you. So the people who support you financially may also be treating you horrendously poorly, and you're like, but I have nowhere to go because I don't have money to support I don't have the funds necessary to support myself, and there's nowhere accessible for me to go to even get away for like a week or a night or two. Like, I can't just run to a friend's house because I can't get in my friend's house because it's not accessible, or I can't get
Yeah.
transportation to get there, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I mean, it really seems like it's just set up to be sort of dangerous and keep you
Yeah,
in that situation.
yeah, and anybody vulnerable, especially financially, would be stuck like that, regardless of whether they have a disability or what our government considers a disability or not.
I want to talk about, you know, having an accessible, more accessible shelters, more accessible spaces to leave, to go to is just huge. But what about just barriers to like even reaching out for help, talking to other people about what you're going through? Like, I would
Mm.
imagine even those kinds of things could be potentially unsafe or even
Well,
impossible.
I mean, one of the ways abusers abuse to get to that point, this regardless of disability or not, disabled people are already isolated, and one of the main things abusers do, first off, I mean, I'm not a psychologist, but as a former victim of abuse, and knowing women and men who've been abused, one of the main things they do is cut you off from the outside world because it's better to control. It's not better. It's easier to control you if you're cut off from the outside world. So people with disabilities are already cut off in a lot of ways, and then you cut them off further. And they say things like, and they say this to people without disabilities too, but I think we, meaning people with disabilities, take it more to heart. No one will love you. No one will care about you. Not like I do. Abusers say that all the time. I was abused by my birth mother. She said that all the time. Like, that's just what they do. They isolate and they make you feel like they're the only person that's ever going to care about you.
Yeah, and I'm thinking especially that relationship of care would make you not only more vulnerable to potentially having some of the care like taken away in retaliation, but
Yes,
also just those attitudinal barriers about people thinking like, wow, you're such a great person for, helping this person with a disability, even though they may actually be very
yes.
abusive or
My,
misuse. Is that
yeah,
accurate?
it's
Yeah.
absolutely my mother to the outside world, from people who didn't know her. The people like, your mom's a saint, you know.
Mhm.
We look how good she is with her disabled daughter, and then closed doors. It's nothing but verbal abuse, like you know,
Yeah.
and that I think not that I've ever been in a romantic situation where I've been abused. Thank goodness, but I think probably a lot of similar things happen. It's the aren't they a saint for dating someone with a disability and
Mm.
looking past that, and they're probably all lovey-dovey in public. And then the minute the door closes, things change.
And that's really heartbreaking. And just looking at that and looking at some of the experiences, you and others have had, what I know we've touched on this, but what are the physical and attitudinal barriers that you think need to change?
What I think,
Just from the
I,
perspective of, yeah, helping people leave those dangerous situations.
I think we need to be more. I think this is just true for everybody, but I think for those of us that are particularly vulnerable, if you see somebody like being more isolated or becoming more isolated, or more standoffish or whatever, away from the things they used to enjoy, even if there's just one or
Mhm.
two groups like that they're involved in or friend groups, keep an eye on that. Check on your disabled neighbors. Do um do frequent checks on people that are considered housebound. I hate that term because it's
Mm.
society that made them housebound. it wasn't a choice. But check on those folks. Like, we need to be aware of what's going on with those folks, because if people need help when they are, I mean, they won't tell you right away, probably they're gonna trust you and stuff, but if you build that relationship, then eventually when the abuser might go out for groceries for like 5 minutes, maybe they'll tell you, you know? Or if you see
Yeah,
something fishy, don't just blow it off and go, well, that's none of my business, that's their life. No. Don't be like, well, that's none of my business. Yes, it is. As a human being, if you see something that isn't quite right, I feel you have an obligation to try to get more information, and if you can, help.
yeah, exactly. And I mean, clearly, the government and our society has a lot of work to do to actually address inequities through laws, housing policies, but that community support is just incredibly
I mean,
important.
yeah, I think that's important for abuse victims in general, to feel like they have someone they can go to. Because, and sometimes these people are very hard to love and support because they've been beaten down by the system.
Mm,
But you have to be that rock. I have many people who I support in my friend group, some of which, due to their negativity, sort of rub me the wrong way. But that even if we don't get along all the time, and even if we don't get along a lot of the time, they still need support and care and love. And those are the people who need it the most.
absolutely. I want to talk a bit of. Oh, I'm sorry, Vicky. Go ahead.
No, I didn't say anything.
Okay. I want to talk about some of your experiences, and hopefully, people have the opportunity to check out your blog because it's really quite. Uh, I mean, just incredible documenting some of the experiences you've had and trying to help others through your advocacy. So, I want to talk a bit about your experience at Arborstone and enhanced care. First of all, just
Yeah.
when you think back, like to your previous everything, the space, your room, like what does that
Yeah.
bring up for?
Nothing good. um, I mean, when you're in a situation, you don't realize how traumatic it is. So
Mhm,
when I was in it, I was like, this really sucks. But I guess that's just life, and you gotta do, like, nobody's life is perfect, and everybody's got something, and this is just my something, and, everybody's got challenges, this is just one of mine, and, but then when I got out, my brain, my experiences there completely retextualized, um, and I was like, wait, that was not cool, and I was trapped, and I didn't realize how anxious and traumatized I was physically and mentally until I got out. And then I was like, man, that was really bad. Like, having a room
yeah.
that looks like a hospital room and living in it and living in what looks like a hospital. It isn't, but what looks very medical and is very medicalized for 10 years, and watching people with dementia, not for fault of the staff try
Mm,
their best, but seeing people with dementia and other issues not get what they need because there simply isn't enough hands or enough training, or, it was mostly a staffing issue. And seeing them not get the recreational support they need and watching them suffer and die, like, that's
mm.
traumatic. Um,
And that's
I
it.
was,
Mhm.
yeah, and I don't blame any of the, well, I do blame two of them, but most of the things that happened to me, resident wise, were done by people with dementia who didn't know what they were doing. So I don't blame them. It's because they weren't able to be watched and properly, uh, have their brain occupied, and they're
Yeah.
literally get sat in front of the TV, and that's it.
And
you
I
know.
mean,
So
it's just a sign of how like inappropriate that kind of uh, place is for a young person with a disability rather than having your own place. Uh,
yes, although
y-
I would also say that these places are also the way they currently are not fit for anybody.
yeah, oh,
Seniors
100%.
also, there people shouldn't live in that kind of environment.
Can you give us a taste of what kind of environment from reading your blog, I understand you were promised, essentially, a cool dorm environment for people with disabilities, which is not at all
Yeah,
what
they
you should
told me it would
do.
be like a when we did the interview or whatever, the tour and the interview. They said it was just like a dorm room, like it would be like a sorority house but full of people with disabilities, and they're just like you, sweetie, and they need a little help. That's quote.
Mm,
And I was like, that's I was 21, thought I was being told the truth. My parents thought we were being told the truth. Um, so we were like, great, this is freaking great. I was also
so
told I
mm,
was quote too disabled to live in community, so that
mm,
was my only choice, or live with my parents till they're dead, and then move in there anyway. So I was like, well, who wants to live with their parents at 21? Literally no one. I realize people do, because like economy and stuff, especially now. But nobody goes, yeah, I really want to live with my folks. So
yeah, oh, for sure.
so I got out, and then I was like, yay, out of my own is so great. And then about 2 weeks later, I realized I'd been sold a bill of goods that was not what it is, and it was actually a mini hospital, and there was almost nobody like me, and they all just happened to be, and the brains sort of, there was no mental stimulation.
Mm,
So I was like, oh my god, I mean, like, somebody must have made a terrible mistake. I made a terrible mistake, but they also did because if you look at me, I don't belong here. I did all that. And I thought if I told somebody they made a mistake, they'd be like, oh yes, Miss Levack, and they'd fix it. But they're like, nope, we didn't make a mistake. And then I realized they didn't make a mistake, that this is how the system actually freaking works.
yeah,
So that's when I started um that this is not a flaw. This is how it's supposed to work. So that's when I started being more vocal about, because I thought, oh, it's just me they screwed up with, and then I looked around and was like, no, they screwed up with all of us. So that's when I became more vocal about, hey guys, this is wrong. And initially, I did just focus on myself because my stepmom said, um, you know, you you can't save everybody else until you get yourself out. Get yourself out, get on the outside, and then work for the others. Save yourself
yeah,
first, so you have the resources and the tools, and you're it's no longer threatening, and then like your care is all sorted out, and then blow the whistle even more. So that's what I did, and then I got out, and I think what the government had expected me to do. I mean, I have no proof of this, but on previous occasions, what they've expected is, oh, just give Levack, or the Levacks when I was younger, living with my folks, just give Levack what she wants and she'll go away. She'll be quiet and she'll go away. Um, which as a younger person, that's what we did.
yeah.
I got what I needed, and then my parents said thank you very much, and they went away. And
Mm.
I don't now. Go give it to me. That's cool, but like now everybody else, please.
And that's really cool that you're continuing that kind of advocacy with the Disability Rights Coalition of Nova Scotia as well, for getting not only proper
Yes.
support for you but also for others as well. could you, like tell me a little bit about your where you are now, your new place.
Oh,
Like
it's
when
so
we
great. It's so great.
yeah.
Hey, that's much better than talking about our room. Let's do that. So I live in a condo with another disabled roommate. My actually the person who started this whole program in terms of coming up with the ideas and the proposal. Her name was Jen Pally. She's unfortunately passed away, but she created the business case along with some people at Independent Living Nova Scotia. You know, they all sat down, created a business proposal, presented it to the government. The government at first was like, ha, I don't know. And um, then the ruling came down about the lack of access to supports for people with disabilities. Um, and all of a sudden they're like, "This is a great idea. We're gonna fund it." So, and so they funded it, and it was actually Jen Pelly's home that was the first unit for getting people in. The only reason we have two units right now. The only reason we have the other unit is because Jen Pelly's parents paid for it and gave it to IONS. So thank you for that. But as it works right now, she's unfortunately passed away due to complications with MS. Passed away 18 months ago, something like that.
Mhm,
We miss her very much.
mhm.
Um, and she was great, and she has books, and everyone should read them. But anyway,
And
um, they
hopefully people are able to check out your blog as well. I just wanted
yeah,
to
I'm gonna
ask
get
you,
back on
Vicky.
that. I haven't written in a while. Thank you for reminding me. I'm gonna get back on that.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great. And one of the things I read on your blog that I wanted to ask you about is, you mentioned, and I relate to this, maybe not, in other contexts, having a disability, that you actually felt feelings of guilt, like moving into a new place that met your basic needs. And I just find that interesting because um, I don't know. I guess it's when you have a disability, sometimes having your basic needs met feels like too much, maybe because nobody else or our society's
Yeah,
not
the
structured so that everyone has that. What do you
yeah, the
think about
reason I felt guilt is because okay, I have this, but now I'm leaving 180 people because that's what was in our zone who don't have this.
that?
So
Mhm.
I'm leaving them to suffer, and I get out, and I don't get to take them all with me. You know, and nursing homes are still open, and even with
Mhm.
this ruling now that young adults with disabilities will not be forced to live in them, seniors will, 65 and over will. Um, so what? They deserve that kind of treatment after dedicating their entire lives to, you know, the all-consuming economy. Like
Mhm.
this is how we treat them. I don't think so. Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's heartbreaking, and even for our seniors, I'm really hoping we're going to reimagine housing and care in the future here, the near future. Um,
Yeah.
can I ask you, like, just for others who are listening and watching, how would you contrast your new life now to how you spent life in your 20s?
Oh, I'm much less angry. I was furious. I spent a lot of my time and a lot of my advocacy, um, fueled by rage. And it was just
Mhm.
rage, rage, rage. And I just screamed and yelled at people. I was not calm, let me tell you that. Because I was like, no, this is freaking wrong. And stuff. So I had a lot of anger. And don't get me wrong, I still do. But because I'm out of that environment of I must protect myself and get out at all costs. Oh my god, I'm gonna die here. Now that that's gone,
Mm,
um, I've calmed down a lot. I'm still very angry at the fact that, but I'm not angry for me. Like, I'm sitting pretty, but the fact that
yeah.
other people have to still live this way, and the fact that we have a
Mm,
housing crisis, and there are people on the street when I get to go home and live in my fancy apartment because the government has decided that I am worthy of financial support for whatever reason. I am worthy of
mm.
support, but they are not. That pisses me off.
Vicky, I want to thank you so much for sharing your story. Hopefully, we can get you back on soon, and hopefully, we can keep advocating for others to have their needs met as well. And thank you for doing that. Thank you so
Oh
much.
well, you're welcome. Somebody got to do it, and yeah, I'll be back whenever you guys want me back. I really enjoyed this. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Vicky.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to The Pulse on AMI Audio and for watching the show on YouTube. This show is also available wherever you get your podcasts. Wednesday, January 15th, on The Pulse, I'm going to be speaking with Alex Howard from the Dark Room podcast about audio description in film and disability representation in film and TV. Really looking forward to that conversation, and hope you'll be able to listen at 1:30 p.m. Eastern on January 13th on AMI Audio. Thanks again to Vicky Levack for joining us today. I'm your host, Grant Hardy.